Good afternoon, everybody. Now, yesterday we had Arrested Development. We had, I know, they were fabulous, but we had a crowd of this size, but we had 2 burly security guards out there, and it was amazing. And now we look out, we've got the same number of people, but no security guards.
And I feel terrified.
Are you terrified?
I'm terrified.
I don't know who they were going to protect, but anyway, they enjoyed the concert. They lined up for food. You know, it was wonderful. Annabelle, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Now, come here. We need to explore these aprons of yours, please.
Okay, well,
they're gorgeous.
I'm very like Tony Abbott in some respects.
Oh, go.
Not every respect. But you know how, be polite, come on. So you know how he's a complete fitness nut?
Yes.
And he's got this secret network of bikes around Australia. So if he goes somewhere to do something, there's always, it's like the underground railway of bikes.
There's a bike being parked out here for 3 days.
Bound to be his.
His, right, okay.
Anyway, so I'm like that with aprons.
Oh, okay.
And this belongs to Amanda Duffy from the film festival, who is the curator of many excellent kitchen things.
Do you think she made that in year 7?
I very much doubt it, but since she joined the CWA recently, I think there'll be more of this sort of thing.
That's
so I went to see her
so
this morning, and
pretty.
she gave me this fantastic kind of pistachio green ice bucket, which is excellent and handy when you're traveling, right? And then she thrust this upon me as I walked out the door and said, "You've been eating an apron." And I said,
yes.
"God bless you, you certainly will." And it's got a pocket, which is a good thing.
Pocket, you see, why don't they make aprons with pockets anymore? Because you've got to put your hanky in there. Yeah.
It's madness, Rosa.
It is.
Madness.
It's crazy. That's it. Now, the other beautiful thing I want to say, the very first episode
beautiful to me.
Of Kitchen Cabinet, and you took off your ring to start working. Oh, I thought, what a wonderful woman. She knows all about kitchen hygiene. And you had me from that moment.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'm easy.
I have just taken off my ring and put it in my handbag, so do listen out for the, APB later.
Yes.
Some idiots lost a ring, opened up her handbag, tipped out, so keep an eye out for it.
We'll call security. They're on our side. We have got them right here. Security, come over here. Now, that's the good news, folks. The bad news is the recipe in your recipe booklet. Forget it. We're not doing it.
We're keeping it real and interesting.
Yeah, keeping it real. And also, we couldn't get brick pastry this week. But we'll talk about it later. Do you mind if
I
we
will talk endlessly about brick pastry.
Yeah,
if
it's
it will
wonderful.
encourage people to stock it locally.
Well, it's,
they do,
when you sent the recipe, we could get it. When we went to buy it, it was gone.
Yeah.
So we thought you might have put a recipe on the World Wide Web, and there was a run on brick pastry.
Maybe, yeah. Look, let's set aside 5 or 6 minutes just to talk exclusively about brick pastry.
But not now.
After we get cracking.
Let's get cracking, because what we're doing, you might want to write this down, and if not...
This is also on the website, actually. This recipe for Persian love cake, which is the first recipe for... What's the it's really very nice cake.
Because they've all made it. I made it after. Who was it with?
Oh, God, this is a 5 minutes ago recipe. You've all made it.
Tell me, of course, who's made this Persian love cake?
All right, you've eaten it. Take the next step. Come on. It's a challenge.
Oh, yes. Okay.
So this recipe is on the Kitchen Cabinet website. If you Google it, it's there.
Yeah.
This was the recipe that we cooked for the first ever episode of Kitchen Cabinet that went to air. I took it to Amanda Vanstone's house in the company of Christopher Pine. Crazy stuff happened, but this cake was very good.
Okay, we want all the goss later.
Yeah.
Shall we get it started in the oven, then we'll make a cup of tea, sit down and just chat.
Excellent.
Yeah,
all right.
Okay. All right, so listen attentively to the ingredients, because there are exactly 4 or something. It's crazy.
It's not many.
Crazy simple. So let's go. What are we doing?
So we start off with 350 grams of ground almonds, and the really cool thing about this recipe is that you can make it all in a bowl. It's there's very little washing up, which is excellent. Also, very little kind of over the hob time, which on a day like today, when it's 90 billion degrees, is excellent. I just went into the Planet Talks tent, and so that was an hour in an incredibly hot tent, and I feel like I'm in a kind of, you know, the modern pentathlon of suffering or something. So it's like, now I'm just going to do this again in a tent with ovens.
Yeah. Well, when cookery becomes an Olympic sport, you'll be at the forefront.
Yes.
Can I please just introduce Sarah, who's... Annabelle wants to take her home, but you can't.
I will be formally adopting Sarah later, federal laws permitting.
So she's busily, she's keeping us tidy.
No, what she's doing, quite literally, is bisecting pistachio kernels, which is, of this very simple cake, the least favourite part for me. So to see someone else doing it,
it's a joy, isn't it?
Yes,
it's a joy. Okay, so 350 grams of almond meal. Yep.
And then to that, we add a cup or 220 grams of brown sugar, just that normal kind of brown sugar that is all squishy.
Do you, with your almond meal, do you grind your almonds, or do you just, for this cake, you can just buy it?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right,
I have ground them, and you know, you can actually, if you grind them with their skin still on, it gives you an additional sort of speckle to the cake, which is very attractive.
I was going to ask that for lazy people who don't want to, you know, blanch and do all of that.
People have strong feelings about blanching and non-blanching almonds. I actually really enjoy blanching almonds because it's a mindless, repetitive activity, which I really enjoy, but I understand when people don't. But you can just buy, you know, the almond meal. It'll be fine, and that's what we've done today.
All right. As long as we don't upset anyone.
No, no one will be upset.
So you've got two different kinds of sugars.
Yeah. So the other, so we just use the squishy brown sugar. This is raw sugar, and I see that someone extremely perceptive, I suspect Sarah, has actually bought raw caster sugar, which is brilliant, because you can use the raw Demerara e-sugar, just marketed here as raw sugar, and it's a slightly coarser grain. It's still a delicious cake, but it's like, it's just got a bit of a coarser grain to it. You can use the caster version, which is I think sometimes called golden caster sugar, which works very nicely. Look, see, look, I've got a television show, you can tell, because I'm doing this.
Yeah, that's it,
5 years ago, we've just dumped that in.
Yeah,
see?
no,
that's evolution.
Yeah, that's right. Now, what do you think is the thinking behind the two different sugars?
Because they just give two layers of taste, really. I mean, God knows, I don't know. I didn't make up the recipe.
Some person
no, I think
did a long time ago.
I think that it was made in Sydney by a chef called Gerard Yaxley, I think, because I know that because I found the recipe subsequently. I got the recipe, like we all get recipes, handed from a friend. In this case, my best friend from Two Wells Primary School when I was growing up in the Adelaide Plains. She is my recipe scout, so she made it, and I just said, good God, that's an awesome cake. Yes. And then she gave me the recipe. But anyway, so I think that chap might have either made it up or adapted it. And, you know, we've just thieved it, so there you go. Now, the only other thing you have to do for this stage is take butter. It doesn't have to be softened or anything weird like that, because we're just going to rub it through, like you were making like the beginnings of scones or something like that. So I'm just going to tip that in. Now, this is going to be profoundly uninteresting if you're kind of slightly below my hand level, but I'm just going to kind of squinch the butter through and rub it through the
Is squinch a new culinary term?
It is now,
Squinch.
I think,
yes. Squinch the butter
squinch
through.
it. Yeah. You know exactly what I mean.
Yeah,
it's sort of
exactly.
onomatopoeic.
Thank you. So while you're squinching, so this is one of those rubbing through type recipes.
But you don't have to be awkwardly careful about, you know, don't get it hot.
Yes,
you know, or anything
right.
like that.
No, you don't have to worry.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, can we, while you're doing that very important job, you're an Adelaide girl.
I am. Well, actually, no, I'm an Adelaide Plains girl.
Oh, very specific.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're suspicious of hill dwellers.
Oh. Well, yes. And anyone from the coast, Oh, what's going on there?
Oh, I'm from the coast, actually. I'm from the closest town to where my parents still are and where I grew up is called Lower Light.
Yes.
You may have driven through it and stopped for a slab of beer at the pub. That's, and it's got a pub and a servo, and it had a post office when I was a kid, but doesn't anymore. That happens in the servo now.
Oh, right.
So you can't stop progress.
No.
And it's quite near the beach. I mean, it's near Light Beach, actually, which is a very good crabbing beach.
Yeah.
And in fact, Maggie Beer has got some, she has got some land at Port Parham, I think, and spends a bit of time there doing some mad crabbing. I, in my dream, would have a sort of a party where we co-host it at that part of the world and call it Beers and Crabs with the Crabs and Beers.
Yes, that's a goer.
What do you think?
Yeah, that's good.
Would you turn up?
I'll turn up.
Okay.
With bells on. Now, tell me, the great South Australian question is, where did you go to school?
Oh,
there we go.
Well,
so we already know primary school.
I went to Two Wells Primary.
Yeah.
And then when I
and
was
who
about...
are your friends from there? You still close with any of those?
my best friend is a Two Wells
Two
Primary
Wells girl.
girl.
Yeah.
Her name's Wendy Sharp, not the artist, but she's an artist herself.
Yes.
In almost every way. She lives in London at the moment, actually, but we have often lived in different parts of the world, but somehow ended up living in the next street from each other. So we do a lot of
As
cooking.
you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she's a great cook.
Yeah.
Really good.
So, Two Wells Primary School,
Yep.
and then you graduated ducks of Year 7, presumably, were you?
I don't think we didn't really have ducks. Really.
Oh, didn't you?
No, I did all right at school, and I actually won a scholarship to a school called Wilderness School.
Oh, we've
which
heard
is
of that.
in sort of Medindi.
Medindi.
So I went from
You're a
living on the
scholarship
farm.
girl.
Yeah,
And were you a boarder?
I became a boarder.
How was that?
Unusual.
Yes.
I mean, actually, look, I completely wasn't freaked out by it at all.
No.
Although looking back, I think that's quite a weird thing to do, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was fun. I mean, it was kind of like school camp, really.
That went on for 5 years.
Yeah, although, I mean, the reason I had boarded was because there really wasn't any reliable public transport sort of between Two Wells and, you know, even the northern bits of Adelaide that would kind of allow you to still have more than 5 hours sleep. So, and, you know, so I came home at weekends. So I did it, you know. I still kind of associate Sunday nights with the smell of clean hair and the sort of sense of drive back to school.
Back to school, back to school. And so were you a goody two-shoes at school? Were you,
yeah.
Were you?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
I was pretty good.
You're a good kid and you enjoyed school.
Yes, I did,
Yeah.
Oh, well, I kind of, you know...
I loved school.
Yeah, I mean, I got to have lots of sort of adventures at school. I liked doing kind of, you know, activities and stuff. I was a joiner, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Teachers would have loved you.
Well, I had some really good teachers, actually, and I see some of them every now and again, and I think...
And were they influential in you choosing your career path? Did
actually,
they
it's
help?
really funny because when I, you know, finished year 12 and I, you know, was going to uni and I remember my English teacher saying, "Oh, what are you going to do?" You know, and I said, "Well, I'll probably do a law degree." And she looked at me and she said, "You should really be a journalist, you idiot." And I said, well, I don't know about that. So, you know, 8 years later, you know, when I'd kind of acknowledged that I was never going to be a lawyer, I thought, yeah, might have been quicker just to listen to you back then. Anyway.
But did you finish your law degree? You
I did.
Yeah.
I've got the bit of paper.
Yes, got the paper.
Never practiced.
Never. No.
But yeah, I did. I finished it. So you know, and actually, look, it's been really useful because I found that where I wound up in Canberra, you know, it's quite useful to be able to read legislation and to, you know about the separation of powers and other things that have obviously helped my cooking as well.
Oh, separation of powers.
Separation of eggs, separation of powers.
There we go. You can.
Now, the update from here is that all of that has been rubbed in, and I did wash my hands twice.
Yes, you did. I can vouch for that. Yeah, and she took off her rings.
I did, yes, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't want you to use that fabulous apron to wipe your hands, so here, have this one.
Amanda wouldn't mind.
No. Now, at university, were you involved in politics or in writing the on D?
Oh, I did. I wrote a few things for On D, and I was a women's officer of the Students' Association. But I wasn't.
You could have been Natasha.
Well, she was around at the time. Right. Yeah, I mean, it was really weird. Now, at the time, I thought it was sort of quite normal, but now that I look back, I think it's an unusual number of people around in my cohort at that time who sort of went on to become politicians or sort of, you know, like that were around at Adelaide University, particularly the law school around about that time.
Yes.
But Natasha was there, and
thank you.
There were lots of journos who I ended up getting to kind of hang out with later on, like David Pemberthy and Samantha Maiden and Mrs. Schubert. And but the politicians, there was, I mean, I only passed my law degree, I think it's okay to say this, probably not, because I borrowed Penny Wong's notes, but not I think with her knowledge, if you know what I mean.
So we won't tell.
This is back in the days where...
how did you manage to get her notes without her? Well, she didn't sell them, surely.
No. No, look, this is before, I mean, now if you study at a university, the lectures are immediately downloadable on the internet as soon as they've finished, and you just sort of, they are available in a news pill that you just take, and suddenly you've just absorbed everything.
Because you certainly don't have to go.
You've got those crazy pens that can take notes by themselves without you even having to hold them. And, you know. But back then, you know, it was sort of photocopied notes. You know? And if you missed a lecture, then you had to try and scab someone else's notes. And I did miss a few lectures, and I did wind up in one subject, I remember, with this fantastic photocopied set of Penny Wong's lecture notes, which were... She had very neat handwriting. She had a very good grasp of the issues.
Yes,
so
she
they
would have
really
put NB on anything you needed to go back to.
Oh, absolutely. Look, and my guess is, because I don't remember discussing it with Penny directly,
did you know her then?
I knew her. I mean,
so you didn't just take notes from a stranger? No,
I would never do that. Obviously.
Okay,
never.
So but she went on at least to use those notes.
yeah. Look, I mean, it all worked out fine. And we're on very good terms now.
That's good.
She obviously went a little further with her law notes than I did, so there's no awkwardness. You know, she became a federal minister, and I became a apron-wearing freak. So it's all fair.
It's all good.
So now, here's the thing that I'm going to do next.
Right, now, let's have a look at what's going to happen here.
So in my kind of mathematically minded way, I'm going to separate this kind of...
mathematically minded at all? Not at all. Okay.
And I'm going to divide this kind of crummy, rubbed-in mix into half, and I'm going to put one half into this tin, which has been lovingly lined and...
By Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah. You will so enjoy living at my house.
Yes, that's right.
It's going to be fine.
She's cleaned out the cellar. You'll be fine. You'll be happy.
Oh, God. So, sort of about half. And what I'm going to do is press one half of this mixture.
I know.
Yeah, You with me?
I'm with
into the base. And that will become the sort of biscuity, delicious base. And then I'm going to beat some other stuff into the other half of it. That will become the top layer. Really, it's a very pleasing cake on a number of levels.
Yes, indeed it is. And it's got that beautiful butteriness.
Yes, it has.
Okay, now, so you finished your law degree, arts law.
Yes.
So you did no formal qualifications for journalism?
No, can't you tell? No, I didn't. I did no formal qualification. Well, look, you know, journalism school is very big these days, but it was, and there were certainly around and very good schools back then. But but you know, a lot of newspapers still, you know, took people on by way of cadetships.
Yes.
And you know, as a graduate, I was able to do a sort of a one-year cadetship. So I just went and sat the cadetship test at the Advertiser because I literally couldn't think of anything else to do, and I thought, I don't really want to be a lawyer. And actually my friend Chloe Fox, who I was at uni with, had gone on to, you know, get a job at the Advertiser. She said, oh, you should be a journalist, you'd be really good at it. And I said, oh, do you reckon? All right, well, sure, I'll put my... So I got a cadetship at the Advertiser. I was the... last in the list of, like, so they took on 8 cadets, and I was told early on that I was the last.
Number 8. It doesn't matter how you get in.
Yes,
once you're in, you make it your own.
Yeah.
The nuns taught us that.
Now, so that's it looks like a cheesecake base now. It's just sort of it's just poked down till it's
firm.
So
you've done that quite firmly.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Quite firmly. That's
I just want it to be a nice firm base.
Can everyone see that in the monitor, like that?
Oh, I see. Is there a magical thing there?
There, I think there and there. Is that right, Steve? Or him? I might.
Other side, sorry.
Other side. We
just. Everyone's just been sitting there going, "What the God? What are they doing?"
Steve, we did discuss this this morning. I'm so sorry. Okay.
Is that working?
Yeah, that's it. Now everyone can see. So you've just seen a green board. Yeah. I'm sorry. Okay, we'll transfer our influence to this side.
But on the upside, before there was some action shots
to the left.
Sarah chopping nuts.
Is there something in that? We're going over to the left now. I don't want you to read too much into that.
Doesn't sound like a WOMADelaide type of thing.
No. Okay, so... okay, there you go.
Okay, so the next bit continues to be fiendishly easy, and it's this. I'm going to grate some nutmeg in. The only sort of spicy flavouring kind of thing involved in this dish, although you can use a bit of lemon zest if you want, which does, you know, work quite nicely as well, is a really good grating of nutmeg. Fresh is good.
Yeah.
I mean like a whole one of these knobby things. What are these knobby things called actually? Are they?
They're called nutmeg whole.
But is there a...
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Are they a berry?
I don't know. Are they a clove or a berry? Does anyone know?
There'll be a botanist.
knob? We're going to call them a knob unless someone can think of something more dignified.
What are they, darling?
Oh, hi, darling. Hi. It's my daughter.
Oh, hello, sweetheart. Have you had this cake before? No.
She's so
you
have.
Once it's you'll recognise it once
it's the one with
made.
the little green nuts on top.
Yeah, that one. Is there a botanist in the house? There never is when you need one. No. Oh well, it's one of those things. You can buy nutmeg already ground, but it does lose its flavour.
Yeah, it does. It goes a bit stale, but look, you can easily just use it. But you use about a tablespoon of the ground stuff. Like it's a lot. See, I love this thing about the nutmeg.
Pass that one
it's
around.
cross section. It's so pretty.
I'll take that one. Just pass this round if you've not seen a fresh nutmeg. Thank you, my love. And then just smell it too, because you'll see the stuff you buy already ground is just, you might as well just use dust from the road, I reckon.
Dust from the road, yeah.
Okay.
For extra grit.
Now.
Look, and the thing is about this recipe that I find a bit enchanting is that it uses so much nutmeg, you know. And other, people occasionally say, oh, a pumpkin soup, just a little grate of nutmeg, or, the sort of salt cod croquettes, just a little grate of nutmeg. It's a seed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
No, but that's okay because at least we know. So it's a seed.
It's a seed. All right. I might privately just call it a knob every now and again just to make myself titter.
Yeah. Okay. So this. Do you want to tell us why you chose this recipe for Amanda? Is there some logic happening in your brain when you decide that recipe, I'm going to save that recipe for when I interview Joe Hockey?
Yeah, there is. I do try and match them up a little bit. And the reason that I used this one for Amanda, and I think it's fair to say I was mainly cooking for Amanda because Christopher, great conversationalist, not super foodie type, whereas Amanda is just major league, and she's really interested in ingredients.
She is.
So I thought, I reckon Amanda will be interested in a cake that just uses this much nutmeg, and it's delicious. I mean, it's a counterintuitive cake because you sort of hear the ingredients and you go, I'm not sure if that would be nice. Well, it is.
It is. And Amanda had the first cheese specialist cheese shop in the Central Market. So she really is.
Woman. That's why I've unaccountably liked her for all these years, and I suddenly worked out why. It's because of her. She's just
passionate about
imbued with cheese.
Yeah, about produce and so forth. So you wanted to impress her.
I did want to impress her. In fact,
was she suitably impressed?
Yes, she was. She was. I've subsequently, I went round to her house a bit after we did the show for a lunch another time. And I took her a couple of sprigs of samphire, which grows at my parents' place, because I thought, I reckon she'd love samphire.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sort of a bit underused. It's completely delicious. It's this sort of succulent, kind of beachy growing. It's not seaweed, but it's kind of, sometimes they call it asparagus of the sea.
Yeah,
anyway,
that's right.
You blanch it and have it with fish and stuff, or you can make a great salad that one of the Ottolenghi books has got in it. How good are those cookbooks, by the way? Anyway, so I took it and she tried it, and then of course decided that she was going to become South Australia's first samphire heiress. And how can I grow this? And ended up getting in touch with my dad, terrifying concept, and they've been swapping samphire plants. And it's always great when you introduce two genuinely crazy people to each other, because you can sort of see what happens. It's great. Yeah,
that's right. So did she didn't ever become a samphire farmer?
Not to my knowledge. She I think has propagated a few from some at my parents' house, because of course my dad, who can sniff another enthusiast at immediately sort of backed up the truck and dropped the plant round to her. But yeah, so you heard it here first. The next Samphire Empire is going to be a Vanstone proposition. But anyway, yeah, so that's the long story of why I chose this. But when I choose things for politicians, it's usually because there's an ingredient that's relevant to them.
Well, the recipe that people have in their little booklets, which we'll talk about later, you made that for Joe Hockey, or for the Joe Hockey episode. Yeah. So why did you choose that?
Well, because I wanted to, he's got a really sort of interesting ancestry. He's got an Armenian background. His father was a refugee who arrived in Australia with nothing and married his mother and, had 4 children. So it's a fascinating family story. But I wanted to get something from that part of his background involved. So I used this. My friend Wendy invented this cake, by the way. And she had a lot of luck with the Tunisian brick pastry, which is sort of, neck of the woods. And we used Armenian brandy, which
we have a whole bottle out the back now.
We shall drink it together.
We will drink it together later.
And so that was my, nod to his upbringing. Of course, I thought, because his dad was a fantastic cook and used to spend the entire weekend making kibbeh and, all sorts. And of course I thought, well, some of that will have rubbed off on Joe.
Surely.
No, not a single
sausage.
sniff. No. Absolutely.
Well, we'll ask you how it went in a minute. Let's get this in the oven.
Okay, yes.
So what do we do now? So that's the yogurt.
Yeah. So I'm just going to put this 250 grams of Greek yogurt in. Scrape,
here's me thinking you need another bowl and everything.
No.
This.
When I say one bowl, I'm very precise. It is a one bowl enterprise. And then you're sort of supposed to jolly the eggs up first, but I just crack them straight in and I whisk the whole thing. Yeah, well,
but
I get a bit sloppy with this.
No, I think this is fantastic. We'll all make this again tonight. Because this
You'll be in the mood after being lightly parboiled in 38-degree heat all day. I'm going to go home and get myself in front of something hot.
Yeah.
Right, so I'm just going to mess that all about.
Right, and then literally
scrape it in. I mean, it doesn't need to be babied or anything. There's no folding or anything kind of difficile about the whole thing. It's very easy. And that is sort of, if this was sort of smell-o-vision, you'd be able to smell that nutmeg is really kind of...
Can you smell it in the front row? No. No.
Might just be the knobs that are going round.
Who knows?
Okay. So that's just all combined. That is all you are doing.
Then you need your scraper.
Yep. And you just sort of pour that on top. And what happens is that the top bit will become the sort of cakey bit and the bottom bit will obediently become the basey bit, and it will all be delicious and people will think you're very clever. The thing about this cake is it's a total sneaking up cake, and because it looks very plain, it's like the sort of nightingale of cakes. It's very plain, but it really sings. And I remember my friend Rachel, with whom I entertain a warm friendship and a casual sort of competitiveness in the kitchen. That. So she rang me up and one day she was having a party and I said, do you want me to bring a cake? And she said, yes, bring a cake, but nothing too impressive because I am making a cake and I would like to look better.
Well, it's her house.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and I said,
I'll take that.
No problem whatsoever, Rachel. I'll bring you a very plain cake. And but of course I brought this because I knew it would have a depth charge effect. Right.
So now, we pop those on now.
Yeah, so these just become a little design on top. Are you seeing this on your thingos? Right. So this is where Sarah's brilliant work comes in so incredibly handy, because I'm just going to make a sort of a ring.
Taxpayers' money working well. Cookery school. Thanks.
So, I mean, you can do some too if you want
can
to.
I?
Yeah,
all
absolutely. Right. So I'm just going to put a ring around the outside of chopped pistachios with their little green chop sides facing up.
Chop side up,
It's just a decorative thing, really. So
I'm being really... Sort of like, no, you're just being jolly.
I'm doing... Actually, what it reminds me of is crazy paving.
Yeah.
I'm just doing a crazy pave.
Oh, goodness me. That's... Oh, I'm a little bit regimented.
Oh,
I'm
look,
sorry.
you
I
can't.
need
You're
to
so
lash
you're
it.
organised.
Yes.
You've got to
No,
really
no, no.
let it go.
Let
Just
it go.
let it all go.
Let it all go.
We can do it, Rosa.
Oh,
Let's
I'll just
do this
take my
together.
tablet and see
You're
how
in
we
a
go.
safe place.
Yeah. Okay.
Where could you find such a tablet?
It's WOMAD.
Not possible. Yes,
Yeah.
not possible.
Okay. Now. So, tell me, Joe hockey then. While we're
let's
doing
go
that,
there.
because
So-
did it work? You know, you were going to tease out something about his upbringing,
Well, we talked a lot about it. Look, Joe was one of these. We did him in the end in series 2, but he was on my list to do sort of in series 1 because what I wanted to show about Joe was really all about his house. Because, you know, I think that one of the things that people always assume about politicians, and this may be to do with the fact that every second day we print a story saying, snouts in the trough, and so on, you sort of assume that politicians live in kind of 5-star hotels the whole time, go to Canberra, whoop it up, and actually some of them live in the most incredibly bizarre, you know, circumstances. And Joe's story is that when he got elected in sort of 96, he went to Canberra and bought a house and rented out rooms to his colleagues, which was incredibly enterprising, you know, way of doing it. And he strategically timed it for 1996 when, you know, all the federal public service had just been sacked, so you could actually, you know, buy a house in Canberra for about $28. Anyway, so his house became this sort of frat house, like a share house. And he had Brendan Nelson living there the whole time that he, you know, owned this house. And Ross Cameron lived there. It was sort of like a man club. And he he says that after one of Brendan's divorces, he declared himself impecunious and unable to pay the rent on the inside room, and so said, why don't I move into the garage at a lower tariff? And Joe said, rightio. So for the next 8 years or something, Brendan, including when he was Defence Minister, and including when he was Education Minister, and including when he was leader of the Liberal Party, Brendan Nelson lived in the shed, outside, out the back. And when I say shed, I'm not. This is not a euphemistic
for a shack.
Studio, whatever. I mean, I'm sure an appropriately qualified real estate agent would describe it as a, you know, a retreat, a sort of commodious studio apartment,
needing attention.
But actually, it was a shed, and
it was a shed.
It was built, I think, sort of asbestos-related substances, and freezing. Just, you know, how cold Canberra can get, just beyond freezing. And so Brendan, who I think likes pain, why else would he have taken over the Liberal Party leadership post-2007? He lived there, and Joe reckons that it wasn't till after he moved out that he realised that there was sufficient power running to the shed to run either the light or the bar heater on the wall, but not both at the same time. Not both. Also, there wasn't a toilet in there, but
we won't
that's
go
not
there.
a cooking-related story.
No, that is not.
Because there is a story, and it involves a red fire bucket, but I'm not going to tell it.
You can't just leave it at that. No,
too much information.
Yeah, too much. I think you can leave it at that.
No, do you know, in our enthusiasm, we've just covered the territory here.
Should we not?
Look, there's no right and wrong way with this cake.
I think we only to do the outer.
Well, I normally do a ring, but I think that we should do it all so that people who get a bit from the middle and think, well, that's annoying, I didn't get a pistachio, will not have anything to complain about.
Back.
They do. They're already annoyed about the brick pastry. They're like, oh, God, all my life I've been looking for someone to demonstrate a brick pastry recipe and I thought it was going to be today. And now I'll be roaming the wilderness forever.
So, of all the interviews that you've done, which was the most challenging? Tell me. The one that they just didn't give.
Well, look, they are all different. And when we first started doing it, I'll tell you the answer to the question in a minute.
In the fullness of time,
we take 4 cameras when we go and do this program. So, and we film for about 6 hours.
Yeah.
So we absolutely make allowances for the fact that when we get there and start filming, it will seem completely bizarre to everybody.
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
because imagine having 4 cameras coming into your kitchen and, you know, a person who's sort of fanning about in an apron and, you know, it's sort of awkward. And if you've ever sort of just cooked when people come over for dinner, like it's that plus
and constantly in the kitchen saying, "Can I help you, Annabelle?" And
yes.
you think, go and keep the conversation
exactly.
going.
You don't want anyone around.
No.
So it takes a while. And I always wondered before we made it whether it would actually work at all, just because it's sort of... And the funny thing is, I think because of the number of cameras, it actually does work because we don't ever have to stop and start. We just start, film, and, you know, it's like a conversation that you have when you're around at someone's house for dinner. So
you don't do it another cut, another take? Whatever happens, happens.
Whatever happens, happens. Yeah, we do not sort of back up the truck and that was great, can you say it down to camera 2? Because the idea is, like, the less you stop and start, the more they forget that the cameras are there.
Yes,
and that's the idea.
Yeah.
It only really works when that happens. So it's tricky when you've got not as much time. So that's...
Okay, so that's done. Everyone can see that. Now, ideally, when you make this at home, you'll just do, say, a 2-inch border around there.
Or do your initials or something. I mean, really. I think it looks great like that, actually.
I think our Crazy Pave idea is splendid.
Well, if I had Sarah every time, then I'd do that every time.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. Now, how long does that take?
Oh, about 20, 25 minutes. I'll have a look at it.
25 minutes. Somebody. Yeah. Time, approximately, give us a 20-minute
Or I'll just look at it. That's the other way.
Yeah, that's the other way. And we also need a skewer. Do we need to skewer to test?
Not really.
No. What are we saying? What am I thinking?
I mean, you know, we can if it fills in time.
Yep, all right. Yes, it will. It'll all of 30 seconds. So now.
So the tricky one, I mean, look, Kevin Rudd was pretty tricky, to be honest.
Was he?
Because we didn't have much time at all, because it was during an election campaign. And I think when we went to do Tony Abbott, we had the same filming time, because it was like Camp David trying to negotiate with the two teams at the same time during the election campaign, because we'd actually finished putting Series 3 to air, and then all of a sudden we thought, well, just out of curiosity, we'll see if the leaders would be interested in doing a show during the campaign. And I actually said to ABC Entertainment people, that will never happen. That will never happen. Look, I'll text them, but it will never happen. It will never. Okay, they're in, so that's fine. But we didn't really have much time, and so, you know, it's awkward to be trying to get to a place of relaxation and reflection with someone who is like, okay, so I've got to go and sort Syria out in 20 minutes. You know, that's tricky. So the other one who was tricky was Nigel Scullion, but for different reasons. He's fantastic. He's now a cabinet minister, of course, and he was in the first series. I often find the show works if it's someone really famous that you see all the time who is a bit different in private from the way they are in public, or someone that you've sort of never heard of who's just fantastically interesting. And he's one of those. And his was difficult because we nearly died. That's all. Yeah. But he was very good, but it was just the death thing that was awkward for a bit. Because we went out to check his mud crab traps in a, as it turned out, crocodile-infested and largely inaccessible area that we stayed in chatting for a little bit too long, sort of as the tide was going out. And then he's a very chipper fellow, but I noticed his expressions start to darken as we had to sort of scoot out. And anyway, it was fine. We all lived.
Well, clearly it was all good. Now, does the success of the show happen because, like we're doing, you know, we take artists who are well known because they're fabulous musicians, and we relax them by doing something intimate and casual, and gradually, sometimes, we see an extraordinary new side to them. Yeah. And has that happened? Did you go, I wouldn't have thought that would ever come from that person?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that, you know, we see politicians being interviewed all the time, and since, you know, digital and, you know, multi-channeling and all that stuff, you know, you can see a politician on television talking any time of the day or night, you know, and, you know, there's a reason for that, but it also has changed, I think, the way politicians behave. It's changed the way that they use language, it's changed the way that they give interviews. When I started, like, at the press gallery in Parliament House, it was, you know, it would be rare for the Prime Minister to give an interview. Press conferences were pretty rare. And so often they didn't do an interview unless they had something in particular to say. And now, of course, we're at them all the time, making them go on television.
Yes.
And their defence mechanism is that they've evolved in the way that they think about interviews. I mean, a good interview these days is an interview where you didn't say anything, you know, which is quite different from the way that it used to be. And as a result, I think people gradually intuit from that there isn't going to be anything interesting to hear. So I always thought that it would be a good way to shake them. If you could shake them out of that mindset and put them somewhere different, they might behave differently. And
it's worked.
To do it in their homes is sort of, you know, I think a part of that.
When you pitched this to the ABC, did they immediately say, "That's brilliant, you're a genius," or did they say, "What are you on, girl?"
Well, look, I did suggest it a couple of times to various people over the last decade. I mean, I started off with stupid ideas, like I was going to do it as a video program on the, you know, Fairfax website, you know, because as a print journalist, I think television must be easy. That's very wrong, it turns out. But, you know, lots of print people think that, well, just point a camera at it. How hard can it be? Turns out quite tricky. So, anyway, but in the end, actually, it was apron wearer Amanda Duffy, owner of the Apron, who I didn't really know, but she called me in for a cup of tea one day and she said, "Have you got any ideas for television shows?" And I said, "Only one. Here it is." But it's a stupid idea. And she said, "Well, actually, I think that's a stupid idea." So, and then with the process started to, you know, kind of put in a proposal and channel ABC2 picked it up, which is, you know, it's a great... ABC2 is a great channel, I reckon. It's a good place to start a show that, you know, might or might not work. And they've had some like great successes, I reckon.
They have. And good. Your show is one of them. It's just terrific.
Thank you.
But why have you always been interested in food and its ability to bring people together? How did that happen?
I've been eating it ever since I was born, and we just went from there.
But a lot of people eat food and it doesn't change them.
No, well, so my mum was a home economics teacher training. But she's mainly a farmer, but she is also a very good cook, and so she always, you know, we were always involved in cooking when we were kids, and so, you know,
even from that little age.
Yeah, you like cooking. Yeah. She likes eating too. But yeah, look, I think I really relax by cooking. Like that's what I like to do. And it's sort of a very happy activity for me. It kind of reminds me of happy things. And
you had a happy girlhood, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I like everything to do with cooking. You know, the idea of providing and bringing food to places. And when I interviewed Tanya Plibersek, she said something that I always remembered, which was, because she has an insanely busy life, right? She's got, you know, big jobs, 3 children, busy husband, you know, they make it all work. But she said that, you know, one of the prices of that is that you miss things that you otherwise would have been there for, you know, like not just family things, but friends things. And she said that she likes to cook for her friends to kind of, just as a demonstration that, you know, I'm sorry I wasn't there for that, but here's me being here for this, you know, and that's a great thing to be able to do.
And is that important for you too? Do you have friends round for dinner parties?
Oh yeah, look, I love cooking for people.
And what's a dinner party for you? Is it setting the table with your finest?
No, it's more of a, you know, a bunch of things, you know, that people help themselves to is kind of the model of food. Because I mean, mostly, you know, when I cook for a bunch of people, there's sort of a kids shift and then an adult shift. So you sort of put something together for children and then get them out of the way, right, boards? And then, and so everyone's sort of milling around. That's a bit chaotic. I'm not very structured, and also we just don't really clean the dining room table off of all of its detritus very often. So there's that.
We always associate you, of course, with making desserts. Is that your forte?
No, not at all. Like, and this is the thing. I mean, I'm not a kind of constant dessert head. In fact, I had not baked all that many cakes until I was pregnant with Audrey, when I went on this massive baking binge, you know. And there's this great bread book called Rosa Levy Berenbaum, is it Berenbaum? Called The Bread Bible, and it's where you can make every kind. I mean, she's a genius and also super precise. So it's like an eighth of a teaspoon of yeast in this part of the process. But you know, so when I was having Audrey, I was in London. I worked my way through it: bagels, English muffins, crumpets. You know, all these sort of fancy kind of breads.
Yeah.
And I got into kind of cakes and stuff as well that time. But mainly I'm a cheese freak and sort of savoury food. I don't eat meat, but I eat fish. That's the stuff that I love cooking. But I have actually learned to love the dessert, you know, through this series, really, more than anything else.
Well, because that's what we associate you
Yes.
with. Now, you mentioned London, and I wanted to talk to you about your time in England. You were there for some years.
About 4 years, I think. Yeah.
And your little
Audrey was born there,
an English person. And so you enjoyed your time there?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I went there. My partner, Jeremy, who I met here at law school, whilst borrowing notes from him, obviously.
Stealing notes from Penny Wong.
When I got posted to Canberra with the Advertiser, he came with me there, and then he got a job in London about 5 years later, and so it was sort of his turn, and so I went, God, twist my arm, okay, we'll move to London. And I worked there. I continued working for Fairfax as correspondent for the Sunday papers, and so we sort of set up there and kind of, I mean, it's a great place to be for all of the other places you can get to apart from anything else.
That's
and
right.
so it was a really great time. It was lovely fun.
And so what were the major difference? Did you find English people difficult to get to know, to understand? 'Cause we are vastly different here in Australia.
There is this great book called Watching the English, which is written by an anthropologist called Kate Fox. She is a fantastic anthropologist because she is incredibly funny and incisive. And this book is her writing about her own people. And I just carried it with me like a handbook. The beginning of the book is where she conducts an experiment on her own country folk she said, I want to get to the bottom of this idea that English people will apologise when you bump into them. You know? And so she went to Waterloo Station and she spent an hour deliberately bumping into people, and she found that 80% of them in fact did apologise to her, even where she was clearly at fault. But the weird thing is, because she's English, she had to have several scotches beforehand just to do it, because she was so like, God, no. But there is this sort of fantastically polite element to English people, which is really hard to comprehend. And I found it hard, you know, because I'd recently been living in Canberra, where, you know, you turn up in Canberra, it's the world's most transient population in Australia. So you turn up and it's sort of like, hi, Annabelle, was that your name? Brilliant. Come around on Saturday night. Let's go to, like, Barbie. You probably won't be here for long, so let's get really good friends while you're here, and then, you know. And so there's, you know, that's what it's like in Parliament House anyway, which is a very transient population. But in England, it's sort of a bit harder, and particularly when you're an Australian and you're making friends with English people, they often think, well, you'll only be here for 4 years anyway,
can't be bothered.
prophetically enough, you know, and that's quite fair enough. So I remember when, because I was working from home, and Jeremy was going into this law firm, and I used to bake things and send them in with him, because I thought, well, he'll hand them around and people will think, gosh, these muffins are magnificent. Jeremy's partner must be an incredibly tittillating individual. Why don't we invite them around for dinner immediately? No. And it just did not ever once happen. And then later, I said to Jeremy, what did everyone think of the muffins after one of these escapades? And he said, this is awful, but he said, oh, look, I didn't really hand them round. It's just really embarrassing. Like, you know, and I said, what? What did you do with them? He said, I put them in my drawer and I ate them. Oh, thank you very much, darling. That's marvellous. Anyway, but later we were having a beer, like much later on, with one of his workmates that he'd become really good friends with. And I told him this story and that I was enraged by this. And the friend, Andy, says, look, to be honest, Annabelle, I wouldn't have wanted one of your weird muffins. Like, I mean, I just, you know, someone gives you, I'd be thinking, where have they come from? What's in them? You know, I thought, okay, then, there you go. I should have read the muffin chapter in Kate Fox.
Exactly. Yeah. In Kate, I'm sure she's got a muffin chapter.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And a footnote to you. Now, I know it was only a joke, but you said with your friend Rachel, there was a little bit of competition. Yeah. How do you feel about this, this competitiveness in cookery shows, and people can be eliminated because their muffin's flat?
Well, I mean, one thing that I've learned about television, and there are about 2 of these things, so it won't take long, but one of them is that every time someone makes up a TV show, there has to be a jeopardy, right?
Yeah.
You know, where's the jeopardy? What happens? Like, where are you going to be on the edge of your seat? I don't know where the jeopardy in Kitchen Cabinet is, by the way, unless it's just like,
no, we're waiting for
oh my God, you're going to Tony Abbott's house or something, you know. So I think that's where the competitive meme has sort of taken off a bit, because it's sort of, it provides a sort of irresistible reason to watch the next episode. You know, is so and so going to get, you know, kicked out because of their awful souffle or something? But I'm as much a victim to that as anyone else. Like, I find that stuff really gripping. But the thing that I can't stand about the competitive is the pausing, and the winner is.
Yeah.
And everybody looks at each other, and then there's an ad break. That drives me so crazy. And the only other thing that drives me more crazy than that about competitive cooking things is the number of times people say, oh, I'm just going to cook from the heart. I'm just going to cook from the heart. I'm like,
I'm doing this for my kids.
Like, cooking from the spleen probably would be not good, so that's great. Or you could use your fingers. I don't know, like, you know. So anyway, that annoys me. But
now we're going to give you half a second's break while we take some audience questions. Are there any?
Oh, good. Okay, yeah.
Yeah?
Hello,
yeah.
Stripey
Oh, right
Top
at
here
the back.
There's a lady here as well.
Oh, okay. We'll do the man at the back.
Man at
Speak
the back.
loudly.
Yeah, well, I'll explain it. Right, here's the question. Nick Xenophon, why did we cook in his office instead of in his house? And the truth is that I don't know anyone who's ever been to his house. He is a very private person, and he tells me all these stories about his house. One is that it's got a giant statue of a god's head in the tiny courtyard, which he bought because he loved it, but then realised it only just... I mean, there's not reason not to go there or anything, but I mean, that's something that I know about it. I don't know where it is. He, I think, works all the time, and he was just... It was not going to happen going to his house. I think there's probably, you know, a whole lot of dead people there or something. You know? No, obviously that is not what I think.
Right.
But
so you think he's just an intensely private person?
He's quite a nervous person about that aspect. You know, I mean, I've known him for a really long time. When I was working at the Advertiser in 1997, I covered the state election campaign as a kind of, you know, really new journo, and I got to know him because I always went out to his campaign events because I was very junior. Because at that time, of course, he wasn't, you know, he was just a sort of another nutter running for the Legislative Council, and he had not yet become the kind of quite considerable political force that he is today. Anyway, so we cooked in his office because it's got a display kitchen in it, as many offices, of course, do.
Yes.
But that was about the longest filming day we had. I had our new little baby, Kate, with us. And there's no comfortable way of saying this, so I'm just going to say it. For about the last hour of that recording, which is where we went round to the Euros joint on Hindley Street, which has got a real coal bed, you know, and we both got facial burns from the coal bed, and so had to sit there kind of splashing water on ourselves for a while.
No.
And then for the last hour of the show, I had mastitis.
Oh, good.
Right. So I was feeling great, you know. There was all this ouzo going around as well. I'm like, oh God, I've just got facial burns and some very bad stuff going on, so I think I might not have the spirits, thank you.
But do you find that understandable that a public figure, a politician, doesn't want to be invaded in his house?
Yep.
I mean, that other people do, fine, they're very generous, but I have every sympathy with that.
I think it's up to the individual, and, you know, as media gets more and more diabolically difficult to deal with, there are all sorts of things that a public figure has to sort of trade, I suppose. Insight, information about themselves. I mean, I personally think that people make up their minds about each other in very common ways. I mean, there's nothing particularly complicated about the way people make up their minds about politicians. They make up their minds about politicians by looking at them and thinking, do you seem like a decent person? Or, you know, if you say something, does that usually mean that I can rely on that, or does it sometimes change, you know? And so I think, you know, one of the things that I hoped that Kitchen Cabinet would be useful for is giving people the same insights that I always felt very privileged to have as a political reporter, you know, that you get to see the whites of someone's eyes and think, you know, are you, are you genuine, I suppose? Which is the big question that we ask ourselves about each other every day, right?
Exactly. Now, there was a question, a lady up the front.
Yes, yes. Interested in the retro styling. Right. Oh, do we have a stylist, and where's the retro styling coming from? No, we don't have a stylist. We have a sort of food stylist, that helps with setting up the kitchen, but that actually translates to helping me tidy up my kitchen, which is a pit usually. But I mean, the sort of dresses and things. Well, in the first series they were mainly my clothes. But then I ran out of clothes, so. But the ABC has this fantastic, collection of wardrobe items that have been acquired for past shows. And I always joke that I've raided the Brides of Christ cupboard, I just sort of, but I just really like kind of 50s clothing. I like, I love vintage kitchenware. I just love those old things. I think that they were built for beauty as well as for functionality, although modern kitchen stuff is built for dysfunctionality so that it breaks, so you have to buy another one immediately. Like, I like things that have lasted for a long time. I love old stuff.
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well, the thing about our kitchen is that it's sort of... it looks much nicer on television than it does. I always sort of look at it through the monitor when we've all set it all up and it's all tidy and everything's looking exactly the way I wish it would all the time. And I think, this is a great kitchen. It looks fantastic. But the kitchen cabinet is, I love a good old kitchen cabinet. And so that's my favourite thing in the whole place.
It's 20 minutes. Shall we look and then we'll do some more questions?
Where's oven cam? That's not ready yet.
No, it's not. No. Okay, so...
Can we turn it up a bit? It's still a bit sludgy, isn't it? Sludgy, but that's okay. Well, how are we going for time? 5 minutes. We've got 5.
Oh, mon Dieu.
Crikey.
Okay, crikey.
That will never do. That's not done. Yeah,
no,
that's funny because it's thinner than usual,
yes.
so it shouldn't.
Anyway, any other questions?
We're going to jack this up so it'll be like a sort of
that's
frittata.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
I reckon that'll,
Okay, yes.
Was I offended that Kevin Rudd didn't eat my dessert? Now, it's funny what people... I think he was a little freaked out by the egg division thing. I thought this was a genius. And when I did the reveal at the end, or I think with Tony at the end, but Kevin at the beginning, about what I'd done with the eggs. So I made a kind of quince crumble for Tony with a custard. And then for Kevin, I made pavlovas with sort of passion fruit curd. And I separated 4 eggs, and I used the yolk to make the custard for Tony and the whites to make the pav for Kevin. And they were really
very
different
economical.
In there. Yes, well, thrift is an important value in the kitchen. And anyway, I got that from my mother, who's never thrown away a single leftover or anything that can be turned into something else. But there's a sort of law of diminishing returns where you're left with a tiny scrap of something, and I'm trying to put it into a Tupperware container, and Jeremy's saying, just throw it out. It's finished. It's been made into 7 different things. Anyway, so, and I explained this to Tony, who, bless his heart, I think has no idea about anything to do with cooking. So all he heard was, like that great cartoon where it's like what humans say and what dogs hear, and all the dog hears is Rover. Well, I think when I explained about the custard to Tony, he was like, blah, 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 blah. Oh, custard. What? Yeah. So I don't think he really got enough about the rudiments of custard making to really understand the poetic nature of the splitting of the whatever. Yes. So he's just like, oh, this was delicious, thank you. Now off for an 80k bike ride to wear it off. But Kevin was right onto it. And so I told him, and his response was, so you gave me somebody else's leftovers. So maybe that's why he didn't eat it. Look, I'm not offended. I view everything as an anthropological experience, but a lot of people did pick up on that, actually.
Yes. Yeah. And I think, it didn't look good, did it? It did not look, it wasn't a good look. This is telling us that it's ready, but it's not. Clearly not.
It's definitely improving, though, so let's just
improving.
Keep it cooking along.
Okay. Now, another question from, I know there was one,
Well, probably another kitchen cabinet series, I think. Because there's a lot of.
Who are the people
territory.
you want to interview in that? I mean,
Well, look, we're looking at a few different options at this stage. I think I would at some point like to do some retirees, because retirees are always very. They're in a different place. They can be frank about different things. There's plenty in the new crop, I think, who will be good. And the more more banged up they've got along the way, sometimes the more interesting they are. So, might give some of the newbies a bit of a term before, Anyway, we'll see how we go. There's certainly plenty of... there's a surprising number of politicians who cook, actually.
yes.
Yeah.
Now, we have a question.
Yeah. Oh, so what's it like being going from being a subject to object? No, practitioner to victim. Yeah. Look, I think that the way media is changing means that the direction of information isn't sort of unilateral anymore the way it used to be. So it used to be quite possible to be an anonymous sort of journalist where you just sort of were a conveyor of information. But I think that now there's a lot more kind of back and forth. Like as a journalist in any respect, you post something and it's the beginning of a conversation. See, I just said post instead of publish, which is weird, isn't it? So that's the way things are kind of going. And look, that can be confronting because, all of a sudden you discover that everybody really does think you're a total idiot, There's that. But also it's kind of like a conversation. So you kind of end up being questioned, I think, more about the assumptions that are behind the stuff that you write, the stuff that you report, and that's a very healthy thing that can be confronting. But I suppose, I'm in a different sort of job now, and this job entails a bit more attention, but I think that I'm still asking other people questions, really, and that's the main kind of point of it.
Yes.
How do I juggle everything in my life? Well, just the same way that anybody else does. It's not, I have a lot of help from a lot of lovely people, and I have, a mother who flies over if I'm in terrible trouble. Every now and again I just get a little bit. But, we have Anya here, who's up the back, who lives with us and helps with the kids. And yeah, well, no, she can share with Sarah. They're going to be fine. They're going to be fine. But, I work weird hours, and childcare is not really very conducive to that. I have Jeremy, who is just, an amazingly hands-on, supportive dad, and I have excellent children, right? Anyway, I think people often say, oh my gosh, the only answer can ever be help, yeah.
Now we have a question, the lady in purple.
Yes. Oh, the women miners. I did an International Women's Day breakfast with the women miners in Western Australia, and they are just the most extraordinary bunch of chicks. They're incredible to meet. And I was talking to this woman from Chevron who said, and she was, I guess, middle-aged, and she said that when she started in her first job, when she turned up to work, all the guys walked off the job because they didn't want and there was nowhere for her to go to the toilet, nowhere for her to there was all the clothes, and she was working underground, didn't fit, it was, and that wasn't all that long ago. There's some amazing stories, and they're doing some incredible things in that sector, and there were hundreds and hundreds of great women, so that was really good. I can't remember, I've just raved about, who was the most intimidating? Oh, well, look, there's nothing, if you can find a point of connection with somebody, then it's never intimidating to interview them, and you can get yourself spooked out by thinking, and in the early days I did this, I don't know enough about this person, I better read a million books, and of course you do your reading, but you've also got to remain a human being who's openly interested in asking questions, even if they're dumb questions. Because I think if you're afraid to ask silly questions or look like a fool, then you're not really helping anyone else who's watching, you know. In some ways, you are the sort of coal mine canary as an interviewer, so you've got to kind of be there to absorb and elicit information, I think.
That's one question here.
What would I cook for Scott Morrison for dessert? Something that would induce him to turn up. He's not that excited about meeting journalists at the moment, I think, so it would have to be something highly tempting and delicious.
What's a suggestion?
Yeah. Floating islands, yes.
A bit pointed, perhaps.
That's a brilliant idea.
That
yeah.
is good.
Or Bomb Alaska.
Yeah. Well, we've got time for another question. No.
I can see Can you try one of my muffins, please? Well, I knew in Australia that if I sent muffins into...
yes.
Actually, I was reading this book the other day called Why Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office. I was reading it for research purposes. It's a book of 101 reasons that women don't, you know, proceed to executive levels in companies, and 101 mistakes that women make that sabotage themselves in the office. And mistake number 67 or something, I'd personally made about 80 of these errors. I checked. And one of them was, don't bake for your colleagues, you're not their mother. And I thought, well, you know.
Oops.
Yeah, well,
oops.
I don't know. Could have been the managing director of the ABC. And,
yeah. Well, you've made your own office now, haven't you?
Well, yeah.
That's the difference. Oh, something's happened. Now, let's have a look. No, still a bit wobbly.
Yeah, I reckon it needs
Wobbly.
another 5.
Another 5.
Hang around outside the...
yeah.
We'll just start shuffling out.
We can go on until stage 7 starts. Is that right?
Is that all right? No.
No,
the
clearly
faces
not.
say no.
The faces say no. The mouths will say, oh, okay, if you want to. One more question while we're waiting.
Yes. What's the worst thing that's ever been cooked for me? Look, now I'm very grateful to all of my hosts, and it's one of the rudest things you can do to leave someone's house and then carry on about how dreadful the cooking was. However, I know that Joe Hockey would not mind if I said that I think the most underwhelming entree I've ever been served was his little packet of Dippity Bix of the foil top off and 2 crackers and a piece of cheese. You know, that was kind of hilarious.
Yeah.
And I knew I was in trouble when we stepped into the kitchen, and he didn't know where the knife drawer was. I thought this is going to be an extremely long afternoon. But anyway, the rest of them were delicious.
We need to wind up, the faces are saying. And so we want to thank you very much. Don't go away because the cake will cook.
It really needs a couple more minutes, then we can chop it up.
We can chop it up and then pass it around. And I'm sure you wouldn't mind just
I'll hang around.
Hang
sure,
around
no problem.
and supervise the cutting of the cake. Annabelle, you've been so generous, as you always are.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, David. Come on, give me a hand. Thank you. That was lovely.
Okay, let's have a look.